pasti orang lemah. Karena semua orang harus ngertiin kamu, ya nggak sih?
The film begins in 2009, showing a warm atmosphere at a junior high school. A student named Edwin is seen drawing, and his classmate Panka praises his artwork, saying it looks really good. Panka secretly has a crush on Edwin's older sister, Sylvie, and he gives Edwin a love letter to pass on to her. However, Edwin refuses and tells him to give it to her himself. When Sylvie arrives, Panka feels too shy and awkward to hand her the letter, so he keeps it to himself. As they are chatting together, the school bell suddenly rings. They are all confused since the break time ends much faster than usual. When the teacher enters the classroom, he announces that school is dismissed for the day. A student asks why, and the teacher explains that there is a riot happening outside and everyone is expected to go straight home. Outside the school, Panka offers Edwin and Sylvie a ride, but they refuse. Panka then decides to walk home with them instead. The three of them board a bus together. On the way, Edwin tries calling his parents, but their phones are switched off. Soon after, the bus gets caught in heavy traffic caused by the riots. The unrest is revealed to be fueled by native locals attacking Chinese Indonesian residents out of anger and resentment over business disputes. When the mob notices Edwin and Sylvie, they attempt to seize them. The bus becomes surrounded and unable to move. Eventually, the rioters forcibly drag Edwin and Sylvie out. Sylvie is taken away, while Edwin and Panka try desperately to chase after them. The mob brings Sylvie into a narrow, deserted alley with the intent to assault her. Panka is threatened at knife point and warned not to interfere. Being a local, they say he has no right to defend someone of Chinese descent. To mark him, one of the rioters slashes Panka's palm with a knife. When Edwin attempts to fight back, he is struck on the head with a wooden plank and knocked unconscious. Hours later, Edwin wakes up and discovers Sylvie's torn clothes on the ground. He frantically searches for her but finds the city already in chaos. To disguise his identity as Chinese, he smears charcoal across his face. When he finally reaches home, he sees his family's house has already been burned to the ground. The story then shifts to 2027. The hatred towards Chinese Indonesians still lingers, though not as strong as in 2009. Only a minority still openly express resentment. Posters with racial slurs can still be seen on the streets, but many locals now try to coexist peacefully. Edwin, now an adult, applies for a teaching job at Thorn High School. During his interview with the principal, Mr. Darmo, Edwin explains that he has worked as a substitute teacher at 2 different schools for the past 2 years, moving on whenever the schools no longer required him. Mr. Darmo tells him he is fortunate to have come as the school has been struggling with staff shortages due to many teachers resigning. Most leave because they cannot handle the unruly students. Mr. Darmo adds that as a teacher, Edwin must establish authority, just as he himself does, since students know he can expel them and ruin their chances of enrolling elsewhere. That same day, Edwin begins teaching. The school is rowdy and filled with delinquent students. When he enters his class, nobody listens to him until he slams his bag onto the desk, startling them into silence. Edwin also notices that students sit wherever they please instead of in assigned seats. One student, Jeffrey, mocks him, saying, "Are you going to teach or just keep talking?" Edwin approaches Jeffrey and firmly replies, "Do you talk to your parents that way and then wonder why they hate you? I know kids like you, angry but not even knowing what you're angry about. Maybe it's because of your father's influence, or maybe because you're a disappointment. Either way, you're just another weak kid lashing out at the world." During the lesson, Jeffrey throws a block of wood at Edwin, narrowly missing him. Edwin humiliates him further, saying his throw was pathetic and weak. After class, Edwin meets a fellow teacher named Diana. Meanwhile, after school, Jeffrey and his gang go hunting for a student of Chinese descent to attack, reenacting the same hatred from years ago. They eventually corner a Chinese student and beat him mercilessly. Later, the film shows a secret hangout spot for Chinese Indonesians, hidden and heavily guarded for safety. Edwin often visits this place. since he is constantly in danger outside. A waitress named Vera tries to cheer him up, reminding him that this place is meant for joy, not sadness. When she learns that Edwin is now teaching at Thorn High, she warns him to be careful. Prayer alone won't be enough to protect him. On his way home, Edwin witnesses his student Christo being attacked by a group of Chinese youths. They even threaten Edwin, but once they realize he is also Chinese, they back off and leave. Christo thanks Edwin before heading home. This triggers a memory for Edwin, back when Sylvie was still alive in the hospital. In her final moments, Sylvie revealed to him that after the assault years ago, she became pregnant and gave birth to a child. She begged him to find that child someday. Now, the only clue is that the child is currently enrolled as a student at Thorn High School. Edwin begins to suspect that the child Sylvie mentioned might be Christo. The next day, Jeffrey is furious when he learns that Christo was beaten up by a group of Chinese youths. Meanwhile, Edwin enters the classroom and starts his lesson by asking all the students to draw something interesting that happened that morning. Once again, Jeffrey refuses to participate, saying nothing ever interests him. Edwin sarcastically gives him special permission to draw anything he wants, calling him a spoiled brat. Feeling insulted, Jeffrey nearly strikes Edwin, but Edwin warns him that if he dares to touch him, he won't hesitate to report him to the principal, who would surely expel him. After that, Edwin approaches Christo's desk and notices one of his drawings. It's impressively detailed, further strengthening Edwin's suspicion, especially since Edwin himself is also very talented at drawing. Later that day, Jeffrey and his gang meet up with some of their other friends. Together, they capture another Chinese student, brutally beat him, and hide him inside an abandoned house. Meanwhile, Edwin grows closer to Diana. The two share stories about their lives, and eventually Edwin invites her to his secret hangout spot. When they arrive, Vera, the waitress who usually keeps Edwin company, feels jealous of their closeness. During the night, Edwin confides in Diana that he is searching for someone, though he can't reveal the details yet. Suddenly, the party is interrupted by breaking news on TV. Riots have broken out in the north. Everyone fears it could escalate into another tragedy like years before. Eventually, the music resumes and the party continues. On the way home, Edwin offers to escort Diana, but she declines, telling him to hurry home and look after himself, especially since he is Chinese and more vulnerable in times of unrest. She is right. On his way back, Edwin is ambushed by a masked man, none other than Jeffrey. Jeffrey pulls out a knife and tries to stab Edwin, but in the struggle, the blade turns against him, stabbing his own thigh. Edwin immediately realizes who the attacker really is. The next day, Diana finds out that Edwin reported the attack to the principal. She warns him that it might not be wise. Even if Jeffrey is expelled, he will only harbor deeper hatred toward Edwin. When questioned in the principal's office, Edwin recounts the incident. Jeffrey denies everything, claiming he was at home that night. But Edwin explains that he managed to injure his attacker's leg. The principal orders Jeffrey to lower his pants, and sure enough, a fresh wound on his thigh exposes the truth. Jeffrey is expelled. He storms out of the office filled with rage. Mr. Darmo, the principal, remarks that in his 10 years at the school, this is the first time he has ever expelled a student. Expelling a student, he says, is admitting defeat. He looks at Edwin and adds that in only a few days of teaching, Edwin has already forced him to do something he despises. Because Jeffrey is expelled, his close friends also decide to drop out in solidarity. Later, Edwin tells Christo that since tomorrow is a holiday, he plans to decorate the classroom and needs Christo's help. Christo agrees on one condition, that his friend Ranga can join as well. Edwin agrees. That night, Diana calls Edwin, asking to meet just to talk. Edwin declines, saying he needs to sleep early, but promises to meet her at school the next morning at 10 a.m. The following day, Christo and Ranga arrive at school as planned, along with Diana, who is already waiting inside the classroom. News reports announce that riots are now spreading further. Because of the growing danger, the school security guard decides to leave. Meanwhile, Jeffrey and his gang, furious over his expulsion, hear the news about the unrest on the radio. They see it as the perfect excuse to kill Edwin for being Chinese and for revenge. At school, Ranga goes to the security room to borrow scissors for cutting tape. There, he overhears Jeffrey and his gang preparing weapons and plotting to kill Edwin. Realizing the danger, Ranga runs back to warn Edwin, Diana, and Christo. The four of them try to escape through the emergency exit, only to find it locked. The key is in the security room. Panicking, they run and hide in the gymnasium. Ranga also informs them that riots have already broken out outside. Edwin considers leaving, insisting that Jeffrey wouldn't dare to go so far as to commit murder. But Christo stops him, saying Jeffrey absolutely would, because he has already killed a student before. Edwin doesn't believe it until Christo reveals that Jeffrey once sent him a video of the murder. Too traumatized, Christo never watched it, but now wants to show Edwin. Unfortunately, there's no phone signal inside the gym. At that moment, Abdu, Ranga's father, arrives at the school looking for his son. He bangs on the doors, demanding entry. Dodi and Gary, two of Jeffrey's allies, pretend to let him in, but only as bait. Hearing his father's screams, Ranga panics inside the gym. Abdu realizes his son is hiding there and shouts for him to stay inside and not come out. He tries to reason with Jeffrey and his gang, saying it isn't too late to stop. If they let him go, he promises not to report anything to the police. But Jeffrey ignores him. Simala, another gang member, hesitates and admits that Abdu might be right. Gary quickly scolds Simala, telling him to stay loyal and not think foolishly. Then Gary resumed torturing Abdu, whose cries echoed through the halls, only making Ranga more desperate and angry. Inside the gym, Ranga lashes out at Edwin, blaming him for everything. He insists that if Edwin had never come to their school, Jeffrey and his gang wouldn't be after them, and his father wouldn't be suffering right now. Edwin was about to go out, but Diana stopped him. He then made an offer to Jeffrey. If he released Ranga, Christo, Abdu, and Diana, Edwin would surrender himself. He insisted that all four of them had to be safely outside the school before he would give himself up. He also asked Jeffrey and the others to step back a few paces to make sure everything was safe. Once the door was opened, it turned out to be a trick. They managed to drag Abdu back inside. Ranga was furious at Edwin, believing he should have been allowed to leave. But Edwin had a hunch. Jeffrey would never really let Ranga go, since Ranga kept pushing for it. Finally, Edwin allowed Ranga and his father to leave if that was truly their wish. Once again, he told Jeffrey to step back a few paces so Ranga and Abdu could walk out. Before they left, Edwin whispered to Ranga, "If you make it out, open the back door. It can only be unlocked from outside." That way, Edwin could be sure the two of them were safe. Ranga and Abdu stepped out, and true enough, Jeffrey and his men didn't attack them. But when Jeffrey started moving closer, Edwin had no choice but to retreat back inside. For now, all they could do was wait and hope Ranga and his father managed to escape. 15 minutes passed. There was still no sign of Ranga. By then, the back door should have already been opened. Edwin told Jeffrey that Ranga and his father must have been intercepted. Sure enough, Ranga and Abdu were being held captive again. Realizing Edwin wasn't coming out, Jeffrey ordered Rayhan to fetch gasoline. He had a plan to burn Abdu alive. A police officer noticed Rehan carrying the gas can and asked what he was doing. Rehan lied, saying he had run out of gas and was borrowing some from a friend's car. The officer didn't suspect anything and walked away. Then Jeffrey began a countdown. If Edwin didn't come out, Abdu would be burned alive. When Edwin stayed put, Jeffrey carried out his threat. Abdu was set on fire in front of Ranga's eyes. In the chaos, Ranga saw an opening and tried to escape, but the exit door was locked. Gary tried to persuade Ranga to join him. When Ranga refused and attacked first, Gary had no choice but to kill Ranga. Afterwards, Jeffrey noticed Simala crying over what had happened. Jeffrey scolded him, threatening him to stay strong and not act like a weakling. Jeffrey's plan was to kill everyone else, burn their bodies behind the building, and erase all traces, just as he had done before. Meanwhile, Edwin searched the room, convinced there had to be another way out. He finally confessed to Diana the real reason he came to the school, not to teach, but to find his missing nephew. He suspected Christo might be that nephew, since they both shared a gift for drawing. Exploring further, Edwin and Diana entered an abandoned restroom and discovered a ventilation shaft. Edwin decided to crawl through it toward the security room. At the same time, Simala pretended he needed to use the bathroom. Jeffrey sent Gary to escort him. Edwin crawled into the restroom vent and overheard Jeffrey, Gary, and Simala coming in. Edwin hid in the first stall, while Simala entered the second. Suspicious that Simala might betray them, Jeffrey executed him on the spot. Afterwards, Jeffrey and Gary left, and Edwin slipped out and reached the security room, where he found the key to the emergency exit. When Jeffrey asked how they could break through the emergency door, Jay suggested welding it open. Conveniently, the welding equipment was also stored in the security room. They began cutting the lock. Luckily, Edwin, Diana, and Christo had already crawled into the vent system. The three of them raced toward the emergency door, but the sound of Robin and Jay's footsteps forced them to hide inside the science lab. Edwin handed Diana and Christo the key and told them to escape, while he would stay behind to distract their pursuers. Edwin crept out and created noise to lure Robin and Jay. After a chase, Edwin ran into Anto and Rehan. Despite his attempts to reason with them, they attacked him. After a brutal fight, Edwin survived, while Robin and Jay were left crippled. Later, Edwin crossed paths with Gary once more. In another fight, Edwin survived, but Gary fell from the upper floor. Meanwhile, Diana told Christo that Edwin believed him to be his nephew. Christo denied it, insisting it was impossible. His father was Malaysian and his mother was a migrant worker abroad. Eventually, Edwin confronted the final boss. Robin, Jay, and Dodie arrived as well. Edwin told the three of them that they were not murderers at heart, that their futures were still bright and they could change. At the same time, Diana and Christo finally managed to open the emergency door and escape. Realizing the truth, the three youths decided to walk away. To keep things brief, Edwin ultimately defeated Gary. Soon after, local villagers stormed the school, looting whatever valuables they could find. Edwin disguised himself, hiding his Chinese identity. As he was leaving, he came across a video of one of Jeffrey's killings. In the footage, the victim cursed Jeffrey as a Chinese half-breed, born of a mother who had been raped by locals.
Edwin then realized the shocking truth. Jeffrey was his real nephew. But Edwin was spotted and had to flee. He bolted through the gate, escaping thanks to a kind stranger who picked him up in his car. The man introduced himself as Panka, and Edwin noticed scars on his arm, marks left by the rioters. Strangely, Edwin chose not to reveal his true identity to Panka. And with that, the film ends.